Man's freedom. I am Reverend Shuker. Man's freedom. God created man a rational being, conferring on him a dignity of a person who can initiate and control his own actions. God willed that man should be left in the hand of his own counsel, so that he might of his own accord seek his Creator and freely attain his full and blessed perfection by clinging to him. Man is rational and therefore like God. He is created with free will and is master over his acts. Freedom and responsibility. Freedom is a power rooted in the reason and will, and to act, not to act, and to do this or that, and so to perform deliberate actions or one's own responsibility. By free will one shapes one's own life. Human freedom is a force for growth and maturity in truth and goodness. To attain its perfection when directed towards God, or beatitude. As long as freedom has not bound itself definitively to its ultimate good which is God, there is the possibility of choosing between God and evil, and thus of growing in the perfection or the falling and sinning. This freedom characterizes properly human acts. It is the basis of praise or the blame, merit or the reproach. The more one does what is good, the free one becomes. There is no true freedom except in the service of what is good and just. The choice to disobey and to evil is an abuse of freedom and leads to the slavery of sin. Freedom makes man responsible for his acts to the extent of their are voluntary. Progress in virtue, knowledge of God, of good, and excess, and hence the mastery of the will over its acts. Imputability and the responsibility for an action can be dismissed or even nullified by ignorance, endurance, duress, fear, habit, inordinate attachment, and other psychological social factors. Every act, direct will is imputable to its author. Thus the Lord asked Eve after the sin in the garden, "What is this that you have done?" He asked Cain and the same question. The prophet Nathan questioned David in the same way after the committed adultery with the wife of Uriah and him murdered. An action can be indirectly voluntary when it results from negligence regarding something one should have known or done, for example, and the accident arising from the ignorance of strict laws. An effect can be tolerated without being willed by its agent, and for instance, a mother exhaustion from tending her sick child. A bad effect is not mutable, for it was not willed either as an end or the means of the actions. Death a person incurs and avoiding someone in danger. For a bad effect to be imputable it must be foreseeable and agent must have the possibility of avoiding it, as in the case of the manslaughter caused by the drunkard driver. Freedom is exercised in the relationship between human beings. Every human person created in the image of God, and the nature right to be recognized as a free and responsible being, all owe to each other this duty of respect, the right to the exercise of freedom, especially in moral and religious matters, in an inalienable requirement of the dignity of the human person. This right must be recognized and protected by civil authority within the limits of the common good and the public order. Human freedom in the economy of salvation. Freedom and sin. Man's freedom is limited and pliable. In fact, man failed in freely sin by refusing God's plan of love. He deceives himself and became a slave to sin. These first alienations engender a multitude of others. From its outset, human history attests the wretchedness and oppression born of the human heart is a consequence of the abuse of freedom. Threats to freedom. To exercise of freedom does not imply a right to say or do everything. It is false to maintain that man, the subject of this freedom, is an individual who is fully self-sufficient and whose initially is the satisfaction of his own interest in the enjoyment of earthly goods. Moreover, the economic, social, political, and the cultural conditions that are needed for a just exercise of freedom are too often disregarded or violated. Such situation of the blindness and the injustice injures moral life and involve the strong as well as the weak in the temptation to sin against charity. By diverting from the moral law, man violates his own freedom, becomes imprisoned within himself, disputes neighborly fellowship and rebels against divine truth. Liberation and salvation. By his glorious cross, Christ has earned salvation for all men. He redeemed them from the sin that held them in bondage. From freedom Christ has set us free. In him we have communion with the truth that makes us free. The Holy Spirit has been given to us, and as the Apostles teaches, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is a freedom. Already we glory in the liberty of the children of God. Freedom and grace. The grace of Christ is not in the slightest way of the revel of your freedom when his freedom accords with the sense of the true and the good that God has put in the human heart. On the contrary, as a Christian experience attests, especially in prayer, the more docilized we are in the promoting of grace, the more we grow in the inner freedom and the confidence during trials, such as those we face in the processors and conflict of our outworld, by the working of the grace by the Holy Spirit. Educate us in the spiritual freedom in the order to make us free collaborators in the work in the church and in the world. Almighty and merciful God, in your goodness, take away from us all that is harmful, so that, made ready both in mind and body, we may freely accomplish your will. God willed that man should be left in the hand of his own counsel, so that he might be on his own accord seek his Creator and pre-attain his full and blessed perfection by the clinging to him. Thanks for watching. Have an eternal home. God bless you all.